our launch date. I launched with a Russian cosmonaut, Max Sarayev, and Guy Laliberté of Cirque du Soleil fame paid for a flight paid the Russians for a flight. He launched with us and returned with a crew that we were replacing. The Soyuz spacecraft launched from Baikonur Cosmodrome, which is located in central Kazakhstan, halfway around the world. And this is 2 days before launch, the rocket rolling out from the hangar to the launch pad. And within a matter of hours, they roll it out and put it up into the vertical position and in preparation for launch, which happens 2 days later. And this is what they've been doing this for many years. I think the first flight of the Soyuz, as I recall, was in the late 60s. So variations of Soyuz has been flying for a long time. There are a lot of traditions that we have over there, to include on launch morning signing the door to the room that we stay in the crew quarters there in the Baikonur Cosmodrome. That's what's going on here. Then we go get suited up in our launch and entry suits, and there's one on display right over here that you can see afterwards. And walk out, do a final report to the head of the Russian Commission, saying, basically declaring our readiness for the flight. They've declared the rocket's readiness for the flight. And we say our final goodbyes, take a bus ride to the launch pad, give the final wave, and get into the spacecraft. That's about 2.5 hours prior to launch. And then, of course, at what we call T0, or launch time, the rocket lifts off from the launch pad. Very similar to what you see, or what you will see tomorrow with the space shuttle down at the Cape. A completely different spacecraft, but all the basics are the same. There's liftoff. The Soyuz takes a little less than 9 minutes to get to orbit, at which time we're going, just like the shuttle, a speed of about 17,500 miles an hour. The Soyuz has 3 stages to orbit, so we go through what we call staging through that. The G loading goes from about a little over 1 G to 4 Gs and fluctuates multiple times during the staging. 2 days later, we rendezvous with the space station, and this is a view of the space station from the Soyuz as we approached it. And here's one of our Soyuz from the station. As we get close to the station, then we fly around, and that's what you see here in these series of video clips, to align ourselves with the docking port. And in our case, it was the docking port at the very aft end of the space station. And here we are, very precisely aligned to that, and approaching at about 0.15 meters per second. So it is rocket science, as they say, to dock with that kind of precision, going 17,500 miles an hour around the Earth. Within a couple of hours, we had done the leak checks and opened the hatches, and we were welcomed on board. There were 9 of us on board. 3 Soyuzes docked to the space station at this time for about a week or so. That's the only time in history that we've had 3 Russian Soyuzes there at one time. We spent the week handing over with the crew that we were replacing, and then they returned to Earth. Mike Barrett, Gennady Podolka, and Guy Laliberté returned with them. Now we became a crew of 6, starting what we called Expedition22. Life on station is very interesting, as you might expect. It's very busy. Obviously, we have the laboratory work that's going on, but we also have a lot of work maintaining the space station, repairing things when they break. Exercise is a very important part of our protocol. Every day we spend about 2.5 hours of exercise. In this case, the equivalent of a weightlifting machine, what we call a resistive exercise device, which is very critical to maintaining your bone and muscle mass so that when we come back, we're prepared for the relentless force of Earth's gravity. Here's Max on a treadmill. We also have 2 treadmills on board, so we get an aerobic workout every day. And, of course, things you don't even think about, like haircuts. Here, Roman Romanenko's taking a risk of me cutting his hair, along with Nicole Stott. Nicole would only let me take about a ½ inch off. She didn't quite trust me. Some major events that we experienced during our time included the arrival of a Russian module, very similar to the one that's going to launch on the shuttle tomorrow. Only this one launched from Kazakhstan, just like we did on the Soyuz. And it's an unmanned vehicle. It approached the station 2 days after launch and docked, very similar to the Soyuz did. to a port on the Russian segment of the International Space Station, and this added a major module to the Russian segment of the station for use, for logistics use, as well as for a laboratory space for future experiments. Within a few weeks, STS-129 launched to bring up supplies, external supplies and spare parts for the space station. And here you see the station as they've approached just prior to docking. They flew around, docked to the forward end of the station, and then within a couple of hours after we completed the leak checks, we welcomed them on board as well. They were on board for, docked to the space station for about 9 days or so. And during that time, we had 3 spacewalks that were conducted, as well as a lot of robotic operations to install those spare parts for use outside the space station. It was a very busy time. When we finished up all the mission objectives, we did have an opportunity to share a meal together, which is what you see here. It's one time when you have the opportunity to really play with your food and have a lot of time, or a lot of fun doing it. Randy Bresnik was on the shuttle crew. He also experienced the birth of his daughter while they were on board.
I'm ready to stand
so that's
relieved.
what was going on there with the handout of, bubblegum cigars. Also at this time, this was in November, we had a transition from Expedition 21 to Expedition 22, and what you see here is a change of command where I took over command, and Frank DeWinna, who was the previous commander, prepared to return to Earth with his Soyuz crew. This is a scene of STS-129 crew leaving just prior to the departure of Frank DeWinna and his Soyuz crew, and this started what we called Expedition 22. We went down to just a crew of 2 of us. Max Sarayev and I were the only ones left on the space station on this huge complex. We were on board by ourselves for about 3 weeks in preparation for the next Soyuz crew to launch, and they eventually launched on December 23rd. As I mentioned, it is a laboratory. We have a lot of experiments going on board. This is one of the experiments that Max and I participated in during that 3-week time when we were on board, what we call the Spheres experiment. These are a couple of programmable satellites that fly in formation with each other, and it's an experiment that is used to develop flight control laws that can be used for future satellite applications. As I mentioned, on December 21st, the next Soyuz crew launched, and 2 days later, on the 23rd, they docked to the space station. So we welcomed them on board here, and that's what you see going on here. Oleg Kotov, T.J. Creamer, and Suichi Noguchi. 1 Russian, 1 American, and 1 Japanese astronaut joined us on Expedition 22. They arrived 2 days before Christmas, obviously, bearing gifts and dressed the part. TJ is the court jester. Of course, it was great to have our friends on board and to expand the crew, this time to a crew of 5. We got through the holiday period and got them acclimated, and then got into January, where Max and Oleg again went outside on a spacewalk to finish the outfitting of that module, what we call MRM-2, or the Mini Research Module 2, to get it ready for Max and I actually to move our Soyuz around and redock on that port. TJ and Suichi did some robotics work in preparation for the next major milestone that we experienced during our stay here. This was the last module that would be added to the U.S. segment. And it came up on STS-130, the launch you see here, beautiful night launch back in February. So again, we were spending that time leading up to this launch day getting ready for another crew arriving on the shuttle in a very busy time period of a little bit over a week with them on board as well. Here is the welcome. By the way, I think I've seen 40-some people on orbit, which kind of surprised me after I counted them all up during my time there. We have crews coming and going all the time, both permanent crews that stay there or semi-permanent for 6 months, as well as short duration crews that come for